Good afternoon, everyone. We're running a little behind today, a lot of stuff on our plate. Today is the 5th of July. Hope you had a good firecracker day yesterday, blowing up your money. Anyway, we're going to read chapter 17 and 18. 17 is my extracurricular activities, and 18 my thoughts and beliefs after 20 years. I'll turn this over to Mark and have him read it, and then if you decide you would like to have a copy of this book, I would be happy to send you a PDF copy. You go to LarryWPhillips.com, go to my contact section, and I'll email you a copy if you request it.
Phillips versus the State of Missouri, Chapter 17 through 18. Chapter 17, my extracurricular activities. The body is not one member but many, 1 Corinthians 12:14. It's amazing how God opened doors for me even when I was working a full-time job. Shortly after we filed our lawsuit, the 700 Club came to Kansas City to interview me about the case. It's a jam-packed day. Peace was filled at multiple locations, including my own workplace, downtown Kansas City, Missouri, at the State Building. This brought back many memories of the battle prior to my termination. We then moved on to elementary school, where one of the homosexual supervisors had prompted the counsel and worked with children at risk. When the camera pools were filming at the front of the school, they were told to leave the premises. The reason we were protecting the privacy of our children, I'll never forget what the reporter from the 700 Club response was. That's why we're here, is to protect the children. The next stop was at a local radio station, KXS. Here I was interviewed live on the air while being filmed for the 700 Club program. The final stop was Adams Park Hotel, a landmark in Kansas City across from Kansas City Chiefs Stadium. This was all a new experience for me that was quite intimidating at first. God gave me the strength to obey Him and what He wanted me to communicate regarding the case. Chapter 18, my thoughts and beliefs after 20 years. Much has happened in my family and my life the past 20 years. The United States has continued to go down a spiral of moral depravity. The homosexual agenda, which was once a set of perversion, is now accepted, reinforced the much practiced lifestyle. How did the United States get to a state of such moral degeneracy? Many churches began to question the legitimacy of the teachings authorized in King James Version of the Bible. The liberal seminaries began to bring in professors that would have propagated the teaching of the Apostle Paul were no longer relevant. In today's culture in America, Paul's teaching regarding the headship of men in the home and the church were for when and where he was ministering, but not to us in America. Teaching really stemmed from Judaism and two of their principal documents, the Babylonian Talmud and the Kabbalah. These documents attacked the Holy Bible and the teaching of Jesus Christ and the New Testament church at every turn. They attacked the aspect of moral absolutes of the traditional family, and they put the adherence of these documents into a doctrine of humanistic relativism. This same philosophy of moral relativism is now being taught in elementary, secondary, university, and level schools throughout the United States of America. The concept that an individual is a master of their own fate as well as over their gender and sexual preferences is contradictory to the plain teachings authorized King James Version of the Bible. Before the prevalence of these teachings, there was even a greater false teaching being taught in seminaries. Pulpits in the United States call Arminianism. This teaching, in a nutshell, denies the sovereignty of God and providence. And salvation places it with a man-centered false gospel perpetuating. The free will of man, which does not exist, is not biblical. I was raised in an Arminian church and attended Armenian private elementary school, high school. I was mind controlled for years by false teachers who taught the false doctrine of Palladius, John Wesley, Charles Finney, and Billy Graham. Churches and schools that I was brought up in denied all the following: election, predestination, that man was born original sin of Adam, the atonement is effectual only for those whom Christ died. The elect cannot ultimately resist Christ, and all of God's elect persevere in the faith that God has given them. So conversely, what I was taught was that man determines his own salvation by what he is in various sorrow. That this salvation is available to all who will accept it, even those who once believed the gospel can any time found rejected. Call from grace hence denying eternal everlasting life. The promise of God to elect by Christ himself, the last chapter of my first book. Phillips versus the state of Missouri. I boldly proclaim the sovereignty of God in providence, salvation. Before I published the book, I had most of the mainstream major leaders of my camp. You will see how many supported me in the case where we took on the state of Missouri over licensing and placing foster and adoption children with homosexuals. However, when these same people found that I was taking a stand against the free will doctrine, describing the doctrine of grace, they seemed to take a hike. Broadcasting company had a meeting with me present where Mr. Dick Bott and Dick Bott's daughter. Dick Bott began to praise the likes of Charles Finney and denied substitutionary atonement. The doctrine of original sin and many of the other orthodox doctrines of the Bible. I let Dick Bott know that I did not agree with Charles Finney. I've been on his program multiple times, but at this meeting I have not been contacted further. This is pretty much the way it was across the board. These Arminian leaders to test those who proclaim the silence of God and salvation of my own mother's church, who invited me to come and speak and stated that they would make my book available in their camp meeting later that same year. When they found out that I proclaimed the doctrine of grace in the book, they called my mother and told her they could not allow my book to be placed on the books in the entry auditorium of the camp meeting. Therefore, the special things page, which I have reprinted, this book no longer applies to individual organizations because they're pretty much across the board preaching, teaching, pointing the false doctrine, Arminianism. Endorse the organizations just doing just that. This is a real wake-up call for me. Up until this time, Jade Secular American Center for Law and Justice had covered my case on the website. Shortly thereafter, when I looked on the website, I pulled up the webpage that talked about the case and observed that all information regarding the case and various bills had been removed. I could cite many other instances like this, but I think I have made my point. One stands for doctrine of grace. One is going to be pretty much excommunicated from fellowship, greatest scum in the Armenian world. The first two chapters of Genesis give us an account of the creation of the earth and man and woman. It explains merely that everything was created in 6 24-hour days. He also, through study of the Bible, learned that the earth is fixed, stationary, and stops spinning through space, orbiting the sun at 6,000 miles per hour. It rotated on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. This is false science propagated by people who want to destroy the authenticity of biblical account of creation. Recently, a friend of mine, Walter Stickle, began to ask me what I thought about the geocentric model versus the heliocentric model. He went on to explain the two positions to me. After reading quite a large volume of material and watching several videos on the subject, I now realize we have been lied to for years and taught false science regarding the earth. I'm not going to go into an exhaustive discussion on this subject, but the conclusion of this book is going to present some excellent reading material on the following: creation, the heliocentric versus the geocentric model, the sovereignty of God and salvation, mystery of Babylon, the greatest lie on earth, the Antichrist gospel, bloody Zion, the Jews, their lies. When I was about 12 years old, my dad told me in front of the rest of the family all the Jews were not God's chosen people, for if they were, they would not have rejected Jesus as their Savior Messiah. Zionist churches hated what my dad told me and still hate it today, even though it's biblically true. Much of the material listed above for your reading deals with this very important topic. I will give you the authors of this excellent research material. Why did all of these supposed Christian leaders abandon me when I started claiming the absolute science of God and salvation? because this doctrine, even though it is clearly taught throughout the pages of Scripture, does not appeal to the flesh. It is not a money maker like the doctrine of free will. I quickly learned that those who were promoting Christ's death merely made it possible for salvation. It merely didn't secure anyone's salvation until the individual let or allowed Jesus in his heart. Wow, what a lie. The Bible is very clear that Jesus came to save his people from their sins. And it's not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. This great lie of the free will of man denies that man is dead in his trespasses and sin apart from the quickening power of the Holy Spirit. Cause an individual to be born again, no individual can do anything pertaining to their salvation because they're dead spiritually. For some time I have wanted to write an edition after 20 years original book, Phillips versus the State of Missouri. What is it like to be a social worker in the highest density city in the state of Missouri, Kansas City? Well, I can tell you firsthand, it's really an eye-opener, especially if you're a Christian, the follower of Jesus Christ. I found out very quickly that the leadership over adoption and foster care had values and beliefs totally in contradiction to those found in the Bible. One of the supervisors over child abuse and neglect was a flaming homosexual who was trying to promote his agenda throughout the department. He would constantly post things in his office area near the hall where everyone would have no doubt as to what he stood for. Another foster care licensee worker had a sign above his desk bragging about coming out of the closet. One would be exposed to the most vile and funny jokes imaginable working around these people who were into utter perversion. If those who held these views even got the hint that someone in the foster care, adoption, and child abuse protection department was in disagreement with them and their perversions, they would attack the vengeance. God used this experience to really get my full attention. I found myself working the midst of Sodom. Those throughout these departments prompted placing children with homosexuality, prompted sexual self-adoption of these children, who for the most part were brought into the system because they had already been physically or sexually abused. I do not consider myself to be a theologian, so this is not a systematic treaty on dogmatics. It is a summary of what I have learned over the last 20 years regarding a world having to do with many false doctrines reported about Christianity that are frankly fraudulent scams. Furthest thing away from biblical Christianity that you will find the 20th chapter about discussion regarding the covenant among the Trinity before creation. 21st chapter is an in-depth look at the absolute sovereign God over all things. God is not sovereign, God is not God. The 22nd chapter is an area that man shows and sweep up the rug to not talk about in so-called Christian circles today. That is the fabulous doctrines of predestination, election, effectual calling. Another chapter has to do with Christ being manifested in the flesh, therefore bringing about our justification through the imputed righteousness of Jesus Christ. It also does an in-depth study of the death, the burial, and the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. Hopefully you find this book a rewarding experience in terms of things you may not have thought about, contemplated, or studied. I hope you'll take another look at the Bible from a biblical perspective rather than from the seminary perspectives that are out there. Next time, Chapter 19, False Doctrine, reported by Christianity, Chapter 19.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Well, that brings back a lot of memories by him reading that. And it also shows how you change over the years as you get more information, as God reveals himself more and more to you, how you kind of change. I was not exposed to the doctrines of predestination election as a child. I was 37 years old before I became familiar with it. May the good Lord be with you today is my prayer. God bless.